welcome. I'm Steve Clemens, editor-at-large of The Hill. We're back with the second session of Century of the Woman, a summit celebrating women leaders as we mark the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dove and the Crown Coalition, Nokia and Philip Morris International, for their support of today's conversations. Gender struggles are not new to the workplace, but progress has been uneven, wobbly, slow. Women make 82 cents for every dollar earned by a man. Discrimination and sexual harassment in the workplace affects more women than men. Women are promoted more slowly than men at all levels. And the C-suite is still mostly out of reach, especially for women of color. Over the next hour, we're going to talk history-making women who took on the gender pay gap with litigation and legislation and incredible tenacity. We will hear from women who have risen to the top of male-dominated fields and from their male allies. And my colleague, The Hill's fantastic political reporter, Julia Manchester, is joining me for the ride. Julia, great to see you. Before we get underway, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at The Hill Events using the hashtag TheHillWomen. We're broadcasting live and we'll be taking your questions throughout the program. If you experience any trouble with the live stream, just push refresh. That should be a quick fix. My first two guests have fought for equal pay for women in the courtroom and in Congress. Lilly Ledbetter was the plaintiff in the landmark case in front of the Supreme Court, Ledbetter versus Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, a good friend of the Hill and mine of Connecticut, was sponsored and introduced the Paycheck Fairness Act in every single Congress since 1997. Congresswoman DeLauro, Ms. Ledbetter, it's such an honor to be with you both here at this incredible moment where we're talking about a century since the 19th Amendment. Of course, we had the tragic passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we've got, women's rights and equity and justice and fairness on the table. So let me just start with you, Lilly Ledbetter. I would love to kind of have a quick form reminder to people. We had a conversation yesterday where we were talking about war, and there are people now serving in Afghanistan that weren't alive when 9/11 occurred. I mean, we need to remind people about these moments. I'd love you to help remind our viewers of the decades-long struggle you went to get fairness in pay.
I would like to, because actually after working 19 years for a corporation and believing that I was at least in the ballpark with my pay and learning that I was not, someone anonymously gave me a note. And when I read that note and saw that I was making 40% less than my male peers, I just was devastated. I could not believe it. And it actually took me 9 years from filing the charge till I got my final verdict. And the lower federal court awarded me $3.8 million because it was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt I'd been discriminated against. But when it got to the Supreme Court, 5 justices ruled against me, said I waited too long. And that was a long struggle. But Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg challenged Congress. She said, the ball is in your court. It's up to you to pick this up and change this grave injustice back. And that's what we did. And when that ball went to the court, I went with it. I got to testify twice in the House, twice in the Senate, and walk the halls of Congress, the House and then the Senate, getting support for the Ledbetter bill. And then it was passed in 2009 and signed into law. First bill President Obama signed. I never got a dime, and I never will get a dime, but I continue traveling the world today, except for the co-vote has stopped me, the pandemic. But I travel the world still talking about equal pay for equal work, because this is so critical in this country, because it's not just your pay today. But in my case, my retirement was based on what I was earning, my contributory retirement, my 401k, and today my Social Security, all is based on what I earned. So when my pay is low, my retirements are low. And that's the way they are. And it's too bad, because so many women across this nation work 30 years in businesses and never get the compensation and the retirement that they've legally earned under the law. It's a shame.
I'm so grateful for you sharing, that struggle. And the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, as you mentioned, was signed by Barack Obama. And we go to Congresswoman DeLauro. While we got that act, what is still not fixed that you're trying to fix, that you have tried to fix in every single Congress since 1997?
Well, first of all, let me just say I'm so grateful to be a part of this segment and to be with a real hero for me, and that is Lilly Ledbetter. Lilly Ledbetter is the face of the fair pay movement, and there would not have been the first bill signed into law by Barack Obama if it weren't for Lilly's courage, her conviction, and her tenacity. She really is amazing. And as she said, she didn't get anything in a monetary way from it, but she continues to walk the halls of Congress. She continues to travel and to make sure that women get equal pay for equal work. And it was that directive from Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she said, "It's in your court, Congress, you take it up." And in that way, we had an opportunity and we reversed what happened to Lilly. But as an adjunct to that, I had the honor and the pleasure in 1997 of introducing the Paycheck Fairness Act. There is a very simple premise. Men and women in the same job deserve the same pay. And it happens. I'm from Connecticut. I come with a certain philosophy, certain skill sets, interests. A colleague from Montana, from Georgia, wherever, a male colleague comes with his philosophy, his educational background, his skill set. We get paid the same amount of money. That is not true for most women in this country. And it's wrong. And you know what's so exciting? These issues, and Lilly will attest to this, were on the fringe not that long ago, but they are the center of our public discourse today. And with the election of Vice President Biden as president and Kamala Harris as vice president, I want to make sure that the first bill that he signs is the Paycheck Fairness Bill. That's where we have to go. That's what we have to do. We've almost gotten there on a couple of times, but not quite, primarily because of the U.S. Senate. But we are on the cusp of passing the Paycheck Fairness Bill, which will level the playing field for women. And as Lilly pointed out, this is important for young women, for older women. It is the key to retirement. Is what you earn is a key to what your retirement benefits are. It's critical to getting our women who are one of the most economically insecure demographics in the country, of getting them on equal footing in order to be able to take care of themselves and their families.
Thank you for that. Lilly, let me ask you a question about your sense of the ecosystem out there now. You've dedicated your life, as Rosa DeLauro said, to chasing, to making justice work. And you know the courts. Last night we heard President Trump talk about filling 300 positions of judges around the nation. And I don't want to predetermine where they're at, but what is your sense? Do you feel like gravity has moved towards better fairness and that it will be easier for coming generations? Or do you still think we have a series of legal fights and that one has to be careful of thinking that the job has been accomplished?
Yes, we still have a fight. We have accomplished a lot, even with the Ledbetter bill, because what it did, it got the attention of a lot of corporations and employers to say, hey, let's look at our policies. Are we treating all of our people fairly? And so that helped some. And a lot of corporations have decided to do that because what they learned, that their bottom line is greater and their popularity in their service or their product that they're selling is much greater too, simply because they are treating people fairly and equitably. But the main thing we need, had paycheck fairness, what Rosa Dolores is talking about, if that had been a law in my day, I could have found out and exactly what I made and exactly how I stood with my peers. And if I'd had any retaliation, there would have been some protection in that bill, the Paycheck Fairness, to have protected me. But my problem, I worked for a corporation that said if I discussed my pay, I wouldn't have a job. And no one ever discussed their pay. And of course, me being a lone female in the workforce with mostly all men, it hurt because no one trusted me to share with me what they were making. I had no idea those men were making so much more money. And another thing, people like my job, we were paid overtime, time and a half, double, triple, depending on the hours we worked, which were a lot. In manufacturing, that is often required. It still is today. And I hear stories from people from one end coast to coast across this great nation about how they're being shortchanged and not getting what they rightfully should be earning. And we, all of the people, the women who are white, it's, in my case, in Alabama right now, we're lucky if we're making 72 to 75 cents an hour compared to the men. And if you're African American, it's much later in the year. If you're Hispanic, I think it's November. I mean, it is just devastating for these people. And so many women, they're heads of households. They support the family. Oftentimes they're supporting a disabled husband who's on a low disability. And that is devastating. It's hard.
Congresswoman DeLauro, let me ask you, you work with people across the aisle. You've got a lot of male colleagues, as we know. They've kind of stacked the deck in the House. I guess my question to you is, when this is dragged out into the spotlight, who is the villain in this story? Who's keeping fair pay from moving forward? Why does this remain such a resilient problem? I don't get it.
Well, interestingly enough, Steve, it's a great question because what we have done in the House of Representatives, and has been with Republican support, that we have passed the Paycheck Fairness Bill on three occasions, and with Republican support, I might add. You know, first time it may have been 14, then 10, etc. But we've had Republican support, and there's Republican, support, for the bill, right now. Whenever it has gotten to the Senate, which is where we dealt with a stumbling block, and the issue has been, and why I believe that the environment has changed, as you asked Lily about. We are in a new environment where the whole issue of women and women in the workforce, 2/3 either primary or secondary breadwinners in their homes. Women are in the workforce in a way that they hadn't been in the past. All of that contributes to a new atmosphere in which we have the opportunity to be able to pass it. But the Senate has been a stumbling block. Quite frankly, the first time where we won it in the House, it went to the Senate, we were short 2 votes. And the 2 votes were women senators. Otherwise, it would be the law of the land. And then it got, gets caught up with the politics or the view. And the view about women in this is, and underlying all of this is a lack of respect in the work that women do in our society. What Lily did at Goodyear and others that you will hear from as to why women have been denigrated in terms of their contribution to the workforce. Women do not select jobs that will pay them less. That's not what it is. The system has been rigged against them. That's what, when Lily corrected one piece of this, paycheck fairness corrects the rest of it and says, yes, you can talk with your colleagues about what you're making or not making. You can, yes, deal with a suit, a class action suit, which you couldn't do before. And you have to prove why you are paying a woman less in the same job that a man is getting. And we are about to see that environment change in such a way as to we're going to cross that finish line, right, and deal with equal pay. And yes, there are a lot of other issues, but fundamentally around these issues is the lack of respect and the lack of trust in women, in the jobs that they do and the decisions that they make.
It's such a powerful conversation, and I wish we could take this much longer. I do want to squeeze in a quick question from one of our audience members, Gina Keel. Gina?
Hi, I'm Gina Keel, professor of political science at SUNY Oneonta in upstate New York. I'm interested in your opinion on the future of the ERA and the possibility for an update of the Voting Rights Act in Congress. Thank you.
Quick thoughts, Rosa?
And my colleague Carolyn Maloney has been all over this issue. I think that there is a real serious movement, along with Carolyn, Jackie Spear, and others. So I think that there is a path for the ERA. And look, I'm looking forward to a new administration where the sanctity and the protection of voting rights is at the top of the list. So that is encouraging. I know that there will be movement in both directions on that.
Any quick thoughts on an ERA, Lily?
Yes, I'm for it all the way. I've been up to New York early on in my campaigning days for paycheck fairness and for the Ledbetter bill to raise money with Carolyn Maloney all over the state of New York and New York City to raise money to get the word out about ERA in the states. And I've been in Miami, Florida, when they were working on ERA. And had that passed, women would have had some benefits and some protection with that. But we could never get it passed. And it's more interesting today to the American women, I think, than ever before. So I think people are seeing how we women need some more protection and some more laws, because, see, equal pay law was passed in 1963, Title VII in 64, and we've never had any updates to force our monies to be paid.
Well, Steve, if I could just say this for 1 second.
Sure.
When you elect more women to the House of Representatives and to the Senate, it is about numbers and being in the majority. There isn't any question about that. But what is at the center is the changing of the agenda, where these issues that have been on the fringe and thought to be on the fringe are now front and center in our public discourse. That's what it means to have more women of color who are sitting in both the House and in the Senate.
Well,
Stephen, may I add one more thought?
Really quick.
The Ledbetter bill was sponsored and co-sponsored by Democrats and Republicans, and it was supported in the House and in the Senate. It became a law by reaching across the aisle and working with both parties, Democrats and Republicans, and it became a law in 2009, signed by the first African-American president. But how much more history could have been made to get that changed and live up to Justice Ginsburg's challenge. I've never been so grateful for Congress and a Senate in all my life. It's them working together across the aisle and passing that bill for other people.
Well, I just have to say I feel just like Representative Rosa DeLauro that I'm so honored to be talking to both of you in this section at this historic moment where we are looking at what has been achieved in the 100 years since the 19th Amendment and what has not yet been achieved. And so Lily Ledbetter, Rosa DeLauro, a representative from Connecticut, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
sir.